Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corkin here. I am the co-host of this show, and check out our archives for other great interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies around the Bay Area and beyond. And of course, this episode brought to you by EO San Francisco. EO San Francisco is the local chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 16,000 influential business owners across 200 chapters, 60 plus countries. And if you're a founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company generating over $1 million a year in revenue and you want to connect with other like-minded successful entrepreneurs, EO is for you. And so you can learn all about it by going to eonetwork.org/San Francisco. And I am John Corkin. I'm the co-founder of Rise25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic relationships with your strategic partners using done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And you can learn about us at rise25.com. All right, my guest here today is Dave Shamszad. He is the accomplished entrepreneur. He's really deep in the real estate world. He's the CEO of SG Real Estate, and he is a number of years member, I think about 5 or 6 year member of EO San Francisco, if I have it correct. I see a shaking head. Yeah, he's really passionate about real estate. Has a great entrepreneurial story with lots of highs and lows over the year. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, Dave. And let's start with a story which I've heard you tell before. You have been very open and vocal about your struggles with substance abuse and with mental health. And there was a story of kind of the breaking point. You were out, night of drinking. You ended up home, but you don't even remember getting home. And you wake up in the morning, you look around, hungover, of course, and you can't remember getting home. You find your car out on the street and you don't remember parking it there. And it was just kind of this experience that really kind of shook you to your core and ended up helping you in your journey towards sobriety. Tell us about that experience in your own words and how it really kind of shook you and forced you into sobering up.
Yeah. Let's go back even farther. So why was I out drunk, drinking so much in the first place? In my early 20s, I started struggling with episodes that I didn't understand what was going on at the time. Just pendulum swings between
Emotional swings.
Yeah, big time emotional swings between feeling depressed to the point of not being able to get out of bed, not being able to have a conversation with you, taking a shower in the morning, to euphoric highs, not needing to sleep for a week, spending every dime I had and then putting the rest on a credit card, partying, everything you can imagine.
And this set in your early 20s?
Set in my early 20s. It took a while to figure out what was going on. And during a couple of the most depressive episodes I had, I was getting suicidal. And that started to come to the attention of people around me. And I actually was involuntarily taken to a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, and committed there for a couple of weeks. And became really apparent to the doctors at the time and they diagnosed me as bipolar. And I'm young and I'm in my early 20s, and I don't really have the same understanding of what bipolar is that I have now. And 20 years ago, a lot of people really didn't. So I eventually, I got medicated. They zombified me a little bit, which just to kind of make me safe.
It takes a while, correct me if I'm wrong, to find the right mix that works for most people when you have bipolar. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. No, I was a guinea pig in there for a couple weeks, and they put all kinds of stuff into me, like antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, to figure out something that would. The first job is, okay, let's just keep the guy safe, make sure he doesn't try to harming
himself.
Yeah. So I left and I was medicated, but I didn't want to reflect on it. I didn't want to understand it. I just wanted to move on. Say, okay, I've got my pills in me, like I'm fine. But I wasn't. There's I really wasn't okay. I was unwell. And then I started self-medicating, right? So now I know I'm bipolar, but I don't want to deal with that. And I don't want to really think about what that means. And to distract myself from it, I was either working or drinking, um, drinking or getting high, or popping pills, excuse me, popping pills. And I did that for years. I did that for years and years. Um, Went to jail a few times, um, blew up, destroyed a lot of relationships, got into a
You
lot of
got
fights.
into fights and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was bad. And several years into that, quite a few years into that, we get to the point where you started the conversation. My my partner had left. She couldn't wait around for me, to figure out what was going to happen to me, and if getting phone calls in the middle of the night from jail, that just wasn't something
Right.
she could continue to do. I was at a real low point, and once again, as was like 7 years prior, I was kind of ready to get swallowed whole. Like I didn't really want to continue to be here. And
Did you stay on the meds, or sometimes people like stop taking them?
that's a great question. Yeah, I was definitely erratic and inconsistent with the meds, because if I stopped taking them for a few days, like I'd feel a little high sometimes, and I
Mm.
thought like, okay, well let me go with that for a few days. But then everything that goes up comes down when it comes to, um, taking care of yourself and your mental health. And if you have bipolar or depression and you're not taking care of yourself, um, you're going to pay for it sooner or later. And so yeah, I would skip my meds for like a week, and it was great until I crashed, and
Mm.
then I'd spend just as long, um, feeling like despair, pretty
Mm.
much. So I'm at this low point, and at that point, when you're drinking as much as I was drinking, like blacking out isn't really, you're blacked out when alcohol touches your blood. Like was so easy to black out. My memory had just was completely gone. Um, and it was a night out. I couldn't really get anybody to come out with me. By then, a lot of people had been sort of wary of how much I was drinking. So I was drinking by myself at a bar. Um, Ended up blacking out, and last thing I remember was having a cigarette outside of a bar, and then the next morning, and woke up like you said. I didn't know how I got home. I didn't think I could have possibly driven until I found my car keys, and I noticed like, oh man, there's blood all over my car keys. Then I look in the mirror and I realize that I'm all cut up and I'm scraped, and there's
Ugh.
blood on my clothes, and I'm starting to freak out a little bit. I figure, okay, got into a fight probably, or something happened. Um,
Is this
and
my
then
blood or someone else's blood kind of thing?
yeah, and then I'm
Wow.
starting to think, well, shit, where's my car? And I'm like, there's no way I could have driven home, right? Then I start worrying that maybe I did, and so I'm wandering around the neighborhood, and I'm looking around the neighborhood, go a few blocks through the fog. It was foggy that morning, so it took, you could only see three cars in front of me.
Yeah.
Every time I got to a new car, there was tension that it was going to be like I'd see the silver bumper of my car, and sure enough, I found it. I'm pressing the little clicker to find a car beeping, and sure enough, I find my car.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm like devastated. Driving drunk is something that is scary stuff, and I'd been doing it. I had done it countless times,
Yeah.
but never quite like this though.
This
Um,
is pre Uber days, right?
yeah, this is
Yeah.
pre Uber days. This was
Yeah.
like in 2010 or so. So I get to my car, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my god, there's blood on the car. Like there's blood on the handle of my door.
Oh.
I go inside, and it's inside the car, on the
Mm.
steering wheel, on the visor, and I'm freaking out. Is it mine? I hope to God it's mine. I think it was. I'm going online and I'm trying to see if there was a hit and run. I don't find anything. So I'm like, okay, this is mine, but man, it's amazing that I didn't kill myself or kill someone
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that next day, I knew like I'm either gonna die or I'm gonna turn this around. Like there was no other outcome, and it became pretty clear. Like you live like that, your luck runs out sooner or later.
Yeah.
You don't get to go the whole distance like that.
Yeah.
And I just had a moment that I felt it became absolutely obvious to me that there was only one way out alive, and that was just to stop. I was to stop drinking, cold turkey, dead in my tracks. And I sat down the next morning and I found every email, every person that I knew, and I wrote everyone an email and said, I need your help. I need to stop. I'm going to stop. And I need you all to know so that you can be there and encourage me. If you see me, go to the movies with me, go for a walk.
And how did they react to that?
I mean, it was terrifying hitting send on that email, right? That's a tough one, but
right.
I was desperate. And I felt like if I've let myself down so many times, what if I make this commitment to everyone else around me, so that I've really got some skin in the game, because I don't want to let everybody down. And people were incredible. I got a flood of responses back, and everything from, this is the best news I've heard, in years. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm going to be there every step of the way. Let's go to the movies tomorrow. Let's go shoot hoops. Mm-hmm. Everything that you'd hope for. Right.
Yeah. People. Did you seek out any program? Did you go to like a detox program or anything like that? Or someone else to hold you accountable?
I went to Kaiser has a chemical dependency recovery program. And I went there and I met one particular clinical psychologist who, she's an angel as far as I'm concerned. She's someone that showed up and helped save my life and helped convince me that I could actually do it.
Yeah.
And help me make a game plan. Because like, it's easy to imagine, well, you can just not drink today and then not drink tomorrow and then not drink the day after that. But when you need a drink in every day and every moment that you've accustomed yourself to needing one and giving yourself one, it's a daunting, formidable task to imagine not having that drink when you need it.
Yeah.
And she helped me figure out a way to do that.
And I'm sure we could do a whole episode on this topic. And I know we're going to get into your entrepreneurial journey and everything, but what were the hard parts? Was it like, socializing? Was it like going out in the evening, or was it in the evening at your house with no one else around? What was the most challenging times for you?
I'll give you an anecdote that answers that question. Every Saturday evening after that, I met up with a group of oddballs and played pickup basketball from 10 p.m. until midnight. And that's what I had to do every Saturday. Because
were they all in recovery?
It was I have a feeling that a bunch of them had some past that they were trying to work their way out of. Yeah. Some of them might have just been security guards with weird work schedules. But that kept me away from bars. That kept me away from the really difficult socializing that you mentioned. Now, if you popped a beer in front of me right now, it's really no problem. But just the smell of it, like the smell of whiskey would oh God, it would terrorize me. So I just needed to stay away from it. So yeah, a lot of basketball at midnight.
Basketball at midnight. That's great. Now I want to go further back in your journey. I love to ask people about what sorts of entrepreneurial side hustles they had when they were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And you had some great ones. Selling, buying 20 pizzas at lunch, bringing them to your school and selling them by the slice, buying boxes of candy at the convenience store, selling them at a markup. Talk about some of these.
Yeah. So candy in middle school, that was my first foray into entrepreneurialism. Went to the convenience store on Lakeshore, bought a ton of candy, Skittles, M&Ms, Nerds, whatever. They're all about 55, 60 cents. Just sell them for $1.
Nice markup.
Yeah. Do that every day for a week or two. And then you have cash for a dime bag of weed and a trip to the movies. Then on Fridays, I'd go to Escape from New York Pizza on Haight Street in San Francisco, and I'd order as many pies as they could make. And then I'd take them back to my school a few blocks away and sell them all by the slice for
Nice.
another. Yeah, and that was enough for even more dime bags.
And do you ever get cracked down like the school or anything?
No, I don't think they minded it. I think, they probably had to respect the entrepreneurial spirit a little bit. And, and it meant that like more kids weren't leaving the grounds to go get lunch.
Yeah.
It's probably good.
That's pretty good. Yeah. So it's kind of simultaneously to your sobriety journey. You're on the business side, you kind of an interesting background because you're really passionate. You go to Dartmouth. You did rowing, you did crew there. Even though you had this entrepreneurial background, you end up kind of working in a facility for wayward kids after college.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up getting into that? Because it's kind of looking at your whole journey, entrepreneurial side makes sense, but I'm not sure how you got into that role. Yeah,
that one always is a curveball to people. As long as I was in high school and all the way through college, I always wanted to help out, and I always volunteered for something. There was a grammar school near my high school that I went and tutored kids at. When I got my driver's license, I volunteered for a program called Meals on Wheels that would take leftover restaurant from foods and take it to homeless shelters in San Francisco. Then when I got to Dartmouth, it was the same thing. There's a lot of communities in the surrounding area that are, there's some big socioeconomic and educational challenges there. And I would volunteer with a bunch of kids in need. I was with a program that worked with kids with chronic illnesses for my last couple of years of college. And by the time I graduated, I just realized, you know what? Sooner or later, like I do want to get into business and find a pathway to, to chart my entrepreneurial course. But like, I'm also at my happiest when I'm helping people. And I'm going to spend at least a few years after college just giving back. I had some great opportunities. I got to go to some awesome schools. Like my high school and my college were incredible. Let me spend a few years giving back. So that's what I did when everybody was at the career fair at Dartmouth and going to the Lehman Brothers, the now defunct Lehman Brothers booth and Goldman Sachs booth. Name your investment bank. This is 2004, so investment banking is all the rave. I was like going over to the 2 or 3 little nonprofits in the back. And I found one program that I thought was incredible. They worked with at-risk and foster youth and youth that were in the juvenile justice system. And so it's kind of a halfway between jail and getting back into the community. So I spent a few years there, and it was incredibly hard work, really challenging, really rewarding. I got a message last year, almost 20 years later, from a kid that I worked with who wanted to let me know, track me down on Facebook, whatever, wanted to let me know that he had his own business and he had a restaurant and he had a family. And he told me that I changed his life.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, even if it was just that one dude, hopefully there was a few others I helped out, but just that one story, I was like, that was great. That's worth it.
Yeah.
So then after that, there was also a part of me that wanted to get into business and, kind of make a living.
And from that, you end up getting into real estate in 2007. Not the best time to be jumping into real estate. So how'd that come about?
Well, I should have.
Of course, we know that now. We didn't know that at the time. It seemed like a brilliant decision.
Right. I should have picked up some more flyers, at the career fair, but I really didn't. I just by the time I finished working.
By the way, that's roughly the equivalent of the guys who got into crypto about a year ago.
Right.
But but you end up turning around, right? So you go to work for another company. You're doing commercial real estate. Going into 07, 08. What was that like? That must have been a tough time.
It was tough. It was a grind. So I got back here. I didn't have a job. I did was just send out resumes, talk to everybody who knows someone So I was like, maybe going to be a paralegal. I looked into doing all kinds of stuff, and I eventually hooked up with this broker who was my boss for a while. And he's like, hey, if you want to come here and grind and try to make some deals, like, come on over. It's all commission based at a real firm, right? So,
and it was a commercial real estate firm. So you're like knocking on doors, trying to get in touch with property managers and building owners.
Yeah, basically.
Wow,
or tenants, right? So I did in the early days, I did a lot of tenant rep. So I'd help someone like you find an office.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was a grind. There was a lot more businesses closing and shrinking than opening and expanding.
Yeah.
So it was 500-foot, tiny law firm office, helping them find a new space and making $1,000. And it was a lot of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And so 2011, then you end up starting your company. What was it like starting that company around that time period after we've had 07, 08, we had a couple of years of real estate downturn?
That was the thing. It was a grind. That was when I was really struggling the most with mental health and alcoholism. And by the time I pulled myself out of that, I was barely making it anyways. I had a few contacts and everything, but I had barely. So when I got sober, I was like, I just need a new start, and I'm going to try going out on my own. I had a tiny book of business, and I figured, let's just give it a shot. And as you know, my backup plan was to apply to law school, and if my business didn't take off, I had already taken the LSAT and was starting to, fill out application forms.
And as someone who's still 15 years later, still paying off that my tuition check from law school, I think you made the right decision.
You commend me for the decision. Yeah. Well, I was lucky. Things took off. I got a few clients. Right off the bat, as you mentioned, it was tough times. So if you're just doing one thing in real estate, it can be tough because there's always something going on in real estate. There's always a time to be working with buyers or sellers. But if you're only in one niche, it's tough. And commercial real estate is super simple. Right now, commercial real estate is in a tough spot, and it was back then too. Yeah. So I started looking at other options and other ways to create revenue streams. So I was getting into residential. I was helping people find multifamily, apartment building properties. And then, I got a team around me that could manage those properties. So now we're doing some commercial, some multifamily. As we grew and made a little bit of money, we started putting some of our own money into those deals with some of our relationships and our clients.
So you'd represent like a buyer of a property, but you'd put some of your money into the deal.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So we kept growing in that direction. And then, as you know, all of a sudden things were in the mid 2010s, there started to be a real migration of people into the Bay Area, and tech companies were growing like as fast as possible, gobbling up space. People were moving to getting new apartments. And if you were in multifamily housing, there's a great opportunity there. Some of the investments that we made did really well. And our clients were growing. So we're helping them buy new properties, and we're managing those properties for them. And then we still have the commercial side too, which started to pick back up.
Yeah. And now one of the projects you worked on, walk us through this project. It was a property that you purchased the property, kind of fixed it up, leased it out. And I think it was student housing around UC Berkeley. Talk about that one.
That was a wild one. So me and a partner, another EO guy, by the way, in one of the East Coast chapters, we thought student housing in Berkeley, there's a real housing crunch in Berkeley, and the campus is growing, and there's just never enough beds or rooms for all these students. And we found a great opportunity to get a big building. It's about a 125 person building, 2 blocks from campus, in real bad shape. And so in late 2019, early 2020, we got a bunch of money together, got a bunch of other investors to bring money in, and we took down this big, basically a dorm. And then about a week after,
was it a dorm before?
Yeah,
it was. Okay, just not in good shape.
Pretty run down. Yeah, okay. Pretty run down. And then a month or two after we closed, was the first time we all heard of COVID.
Nice. So all the kids leave. Oh, awful.
John, literally these kids were running by our office, throwing their keys under the door
Jeez.
and flying back to wherever they were from. So it was a ghost town in Berkeley, and our building was virtually empty.
And were they not paying, or how did that work for the first year at least?
Oh, yeah, no. The rent projections were kaput.
And they just stopped paying.
So, yeah. They stopped paying and they left. And then the entire school year, it was empty.
Wow.
So now, instead of being able to, our plan was to slowly renovate one floor at a time while the rest of the units were filled and we had income, but there was no one there. So we had to figure out a way to pay mortgage out of pocket.
Oof.
We got, the bank worked with us, I would say, a little bit. But the rest of it was just grinding to get through. And we had
Did you have to get additional investment in order to pay for all that, or what'd you do?
I'll leave it at this. We did what we had to do to pay the mortgage every month.
Yeah.
Every month is a new adventure.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was stressful, but we'd already raised the capital to do the improvements that we had planned to do over about 4 years. We were like, let's just do it all now. We got an empty building. Let's knock this thing out. And it was fabulous. It turned into a real class act of a building. We replaced pretty much everything inside. And it was still a pretty affordable place to live, but it was a nice place to live for a reasonable rent, which is hard to do in Berkeley. And our target was people that wanted a nice living experience, but like didn't want to break the bank living in a, brand new, apartment by themselves. And fortunately, school opened the next year. If it had been closed for another year, I don't know if we would have still been able to.
Wow. So it was a big gamble.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that big of a gamble. It was supposed to go according to plan. But then, it turned into a pretty high risk, high reward scenario. So school opens back up. And by then we've renovated the whole building and people loved it. Everybody moved in. We hit our rent projections and exceeded them. And the building's running like clockwork. And we had not necessarily planned on selling it, but we realized two things happened. One, we'd added a ton of value all at once. And the rents we were seeing indicated like, okay, it's worth even more than we thought. And then two, we reached a point in the market cycle where interest rates were so low, property values were so high that even though we were projecting to sell in like 2026, we looked at the potential exit valuation and were like, even with a prepaid penalty to the bank, it may still make sense to exit now and just pay out all the investors, pay out ourselves, and move on to the next project. So that's what we did. So that towards the end of last year, we got out. I retained a small, which is pretty consistent with our business model. I retained a small ownership in the property with the next buyer. They wanted to keep us in as a capital partner and as the operator. So we actually still run the place and own a small piece of it too.
That's really cool. What a great success story. You kind of rolled the dice and it ended up working out okay for you. That's really cool.
By the skin of our teeth, yes.
Yeah, good thing COVID didn't go one more year. Well, Dave, this has been great. I know we're almost out of time. I'll just wrap up with a question I enjoy asking everyone, which is, I'm a big fan of gratitude, especially expressing gratitude publicly to those who've helped you along the way. And a lot of times when I ask that, people will mention, they'll immediately say family or friends or team members or employees or something like that. But really what I'd love to hear is more like peers, contemporaries, others in your industry maybe who've helped you. Who would you want to shout out and thank you?
I would shout out the guy that hired me after I was in social work when I had no experience in real estate, and he was at MRE Commercial. His name's Richard Odenheimer, and he took me under his wing. And it was during a time when I was struggling quite a bit, but he didn't show me the eggs that he kept trying to work with me, and made a home for me there. Taught me half of what I know now, honestly. And he was great. And a lot of the things that he was doing at that point in his career, are things that I'm still doing now. And I also have a bit of gratitude for Steph Curry, who is going to help the Warriors win on Sunday. So
He's a bit of a Warriors fan here.
So we can get back in the series and win this thing.
This will be published way after that, but that's okay. You can still be grateful to Steph Curry. That's cool. Who isn't grateful to Steph Curry? And then last piece, you've been an EO member for a number of years. What would you say to someone listening to this who's considering becoming a part of EO? What it's like, what it's all about?
I'm immensely grateful that I joined EO. It's a place where if you want to be around people that will constantly inspire you, where you'll hear and see and feel great ideas and great energy, and be around a bunch of people's individual success for the betterment of everybody in the group success, that's EO. You know, I meet with, go to events and you meet with your individual form on a regular basis, and all of a sudden you're in a room with only people who've started businesses, sold businesses, constantly growing their own individual brand or enterprise. And that's inspiring stuff to be around.
Yeah.
So if that's what you want to be, if that's what you want to do, put yourself in that mix and be around those people.
Where can people go to learn more about you and SG Real Estate, Dave?
Best place to go to learn about SG Real Estate is sgrealestateco.com. And you can also go to my own personal website to see more about my story, my background, and my forthcoming book. And that is David Shamszad, SHAMSZAD.com.
All right, great. We'll put those links in the show notes. Dave, thanks so much for your time.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.